Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This podcast is on dealing with childhood trauma and its effects. This podcast aims to provide hope and answers and take away the stigmas of childhood traumas. My name is Rochelle Knight, and I'll be your host. Dr. Dana Philisaint is a professional counselor who focuses on childhood traumas. Today's topic is how to gain the motivation to do anything after experience with childhood trauma. Hi, Dr. Dana Philisaint.
Hello, I'm glad to be back again for our continued conversation on this very, very important topic.
Great. We're just going to jump right into today's topic, which is experiencing, gaining the motivation after childhood trauma. So the first question is, what is the correlation between trauma and motivation?
That's a good question. Well, there are studies that's been showing that the aftermath of trauma can actually include things like change in one's motivation, cognition, and their emotions. And that was from an article that was published by the University of Switzerland. And the psychologists there, they were looking from the Department of Psychology, actually. They were looking to see, what's going on with people and motivation after trauma. And so they show that, these things were definitely impacted. So when we're talking about motivation, we're talking about the reasons or the reason that a person had for acting or behaving a certain particular way that they desire. And also cognition, they're looking at the mental action or the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thoughts, experience, and their senses. In other words, how does a person learn? So teaching people how to learn, that or the way that people learn also changes after trauma. And, of course, one's emotions, which is their feelings and their moods, can also change after trauma. So those things are correlated. Psychologically, we see that trauma does impact one's motivation or can impact one's motivation.
All right. Well, let's take a step back for just a minute. So how does a person lose motivation after trauma?
Okay. So without going through the whole physiology of the brain and trauma and so forth, we're seeing through the various research that experiencing a traumatic event such as sexual abuse, natural disasters, or physical violence can lead to changes in the physiological makeup of the person. And what it is that the uncontrollable experiences of that event can create a sense of learned helplessness in the individual. So that part of it really diminishes one's motivation. In other words, they didn't have any control over the situation, and so they learn to be helpless or feel like they have no way of helping themselves, and that leads to diminish of their motivation. And in the sense as well, traumatic experiences puts a lot of stress on an individual's brain, and with that stress, they lack the desire to even set goals, which is essentially how people achieve a lot of things or set their motivation to do and complete things. And so they had the attitude, again, of why even try if I'm not going to succeed, and even setting the goals. So that's how it kind of go all together.
Okay. So you talked about motivation and how they just don't have probably the desire. So the question is, what are the factors of motivation, or how is motivation specifically measured?
Okay. So if you're looking at the factors of motivation, we're talking things like self-efficacy. We're talking about locus of control. We're talking self-control, and we're also talking about impulsivity. So let me explain. So self-efficacy is one's belief in their ability to successfully carry out a task. So if they don't believe that they can complete the task or will be successful at the task, then they will try to avoid the task altogether. And locus of control is another way of saying that the degree to which a person believes that they have the control over the outcome of their event. And so that's why that whole why try comes in, because if they feel like they don't have the control of the outcome, so then why even try? And self-control, of course, is the ability to control your emotion and control your behavior, even in difficulty or difficult situations. Or in other words, if I don't feel like it, then I'm just not going to do it. So that stuff, they have that lack of self-control there. And if you can also measure impulsivity by the lack of foresight that a person has, or a little to no foresight of perhaps the outcome of their circumstances, a situation that they would want to be the outcome, and their impulsivity then kind of diminished that overlook. And then also, when you take all these things into consideration, is essentially goal-directed behaviors. So if I set a goal, I'm going to do it regardless of how I'm feeling, regardless of how I perceive the outcome might be. So all of those things are things to consider when measuring motivation.
So I know you talked about goal-directed behavior. You talked about self-efficacy, essentially where a person believes something that they're able to do it. I mean, the question is, what if you don't feel like doing anything?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. So cognitive theories of motivation really looks at the thoughts, the behavior, the attitude that a person has towards motivating them to complete a task. So the basic thought is to separate your feelings from your actions and to have the right thoughts as well. So if you can separate your thoughts and your feelings and the behaviors, then you can kind of start seeing things in a proper order, because your thoughts actually produces your feelings, which actually produces the outcome, which is the behavior most of the time. And so if you separate the thoughts, you can start asking yourself questions about your beliefs, about your ability, and your desired outcome. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. So if I want to complete a task, some things that you might want to start asking yourself is, am I physically able to carry the task? Can I do it? Am I able to do it? Do I know how to do it? Or if I don't know how to do it, can I go and learn how to do it? Or you can ask yourself questions like, is it realistic, and what doable steps can I get those things done? So it has absolutely nothing to do with your feelings. So it's taking away that feeling aspect, because if you're relying on your feelings, then you won't get anything done, because your feelings kind of fluctuate. It goes, certain days it feels like doing certain things, and some days it doesn't. So it's very unstable. So we teach people how to go and do things on the basis of thoughtful processing in their belief system, and how would it make them feel after they've completed? What would that say about the person after they've completed their desired task? So those things tend to be things that we work on to help an individual get to the stage of passing that thoughtful or that feeling of, I cannot do this, or I don't feel like doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I think you answered one of my questions, because my next question would have been, it sounds great in theory, but how does a person get from that point to, starting actually working on specific tasks? But I think you addressed it by saying there's something we work on. Is that right? This is a process. This is not something that just happens overnight, right?
Yes, but and at the same time, too, it's the idea of you have to choose to live, and I tell my clients this all the time, you have to choose to live by principle and not by your feelings. If you're basing things on your feelings, it's not a stable way to live. But if you live by principle, you know the principle behind the things that you need to do, and you just live by that principle or the belief that you have, then it makes more sense to carry it out. Along with that, I want to share about a theory that many may not be familiar with, but it's a theory in social psychology called sub-perception theory. The sub-perception theory is the idea that you can actually see one's behavior and make inferences about that behavior about who the person is. For example, let me give you this scenario. Let's say you've seen a person outside and they're holding hands, and you, without even knowing the person, the two individuals, you can say, oh, they really love each other, or they like each other. So the same thing goes for you as well. If you're doing certain tasks, your thoughts will say, hey, you like this task, or you don't like this task, or whatever it is, based on how your behavior is. So you can actually learn to like something by doing it. So in other words, your feelings might even change by your action that you carry. So it's not enough to just not do the behavior. When you carry the behavior, your feelings actually follow.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think this goes back to what you were saying initially. You have to separate your feelings from the behavior, and it sounds like just the process of doing it, whatever that task is that what you're saying, that eventually your behaviors will change, right, and adapt? Is that correct?
Your thoughts actually, your feelings will actually change. Mm-hmm.
Your feelings, okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Do you have any additional last thoughts, Dr. Dana Philistine?
Okay. Well, just to kind of give a little bit more on the research behind the self-perception theory. I think it's really fascinating. There was some research that were done. They showed that, let's say you tell people to smile. If they keep smiling long enough, their feeling of happiness will actually follow. Or let's say a person said they're not outgoing, and you tell them, hey, put yourself out there and think of yourself as an outgoing person. Go to this place and, start asking people questions. Act like you're an outgoing person. Eventually, you can actually become an outgoing person without even having the, thought that, hey, I don't like it anymore. So you can actually change. So my last thought would actually be, what the Bible says about as a man thinketh, so is he. So that's the first thought. Start thinking before, you start basing things on your feelings. And that's found in Proverbs 23, verse 7. And another very good thought and Bible text to remember is Matthew 7, verse 16. You shall know them by their fruit. What they're doing, people see you on the basis of what you're doing, and people will associate your action more so than your feelings. And that's what people see. And then one last Bible text, which is very encouraging, is Proverbs 20, verse 11. It says, even a child is known by his doing, whether his work be pure or whether it be right. So your actions, again, the things that you're doing, is so much important. There's a lot of importance in it. So by doing those things, you can actually start to feel a certain way about yourself, about your environment, about your situation in general.
Thank you, Dr. Dana Philisaint, for that fantastic information today. Again, if you guys need additional resources or you need more information about Dr. Dana Philisaint or MindCare, please go to mindcare.us for additional information. Again, Dr. Dana Philisaint, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today.
I'm enjoying it, so God bless. Thank you.
All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.